This is Todd Toback, and welcome to the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today, I am so excited because we have a guest who's going to blow your socks off. Not only is this one of the nation's best single-family investors, but he's also a very, very, very good friend of mine. And if you are looking to play the long game in real estate, man, you have to listen to today's show. We are going to be talking about wealth building and passive residual income. Also, if this is your first time listening to the show and you're looking to do your first deal or you're looking to scale your business to 7 figures, make sure you head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script. And there I actually have the very exact script that I've used to buy over 1,300 real estate deals, the same exact script I've used to train thousands of investors across the country, and the same script I've used to train my in-house acquisition specialist. I'm going to give it to you totally for free. So go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script. So today I want to welcome Michael Jake. How's it doing? How you doing, Michael?
I am fantastic. Thanks for asking.
So, Michael, I know I've given you a big introduction here, but I'm going to give people kind of a little summary on you, and I'll let you fill in the gaps. Is that okay?
Cool.
So Michael is an investor in Colorado Springs, Colorado, very competitive market. He's been investing now probably for over 20 years. Geez, we're definitely the OGs now. And he has a ton of single family rentals. I'll let him share the numbers. I'm not exactly sure what he wants to share and what's not, but don't worry. I've got a crowbar here, guys. So I'm going to try to really pry as much as I can out of him. He's got a ton of residual passive income coming in. He's used subject twos. He's used owner financing. He's bought traditionally. You name it. This guy is a rental machine. And don't worry, he's also wholesaled some houses and done some flips. But I just had to have Michael on the show because he's an example of what you can achieve in this business. And he's just also a good friend. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you much. Good to be here.
So Mike, tell us, how'd you get started?
Well, okay. How do I answer that? I going back, I kind of had my own version of a rich dad. I had a really good friend I've known since 3rd grade. And when I was in high school, my friend's dad had built and sold several businesses and was starting to get into real estate. He had done a few flips, had done some rentals. This was, kind of my friend that I always admired his lifestyle. When we were kids, he had every single Star Wars figure, like he had all those trophies as a kid and you kind of looked at what his parents were doing. And because of Sean and in our young 20s, I saw him starting to accumulate rental properties. And that was kind of always part of my plan. I'm like, that seems to work. He's a smart guy. And I needed to get it took me a long time to get through college, and I was self-paying and kind of in and out. But anyway, in my late 20s, I finally got a degree. My next goal was to get to Colorado. Finally, when I got to Colorado, I was like, okay, now I'm going to do this real estate thing. And my plan was kind of the slow and steady, buy a rental every couple of years and hang on to them and eventually, have them as part of my retirement plan. And unfortunately, I was in information technology. And right after the millennium, we got called into the big auditorium and, we were told 30% of us were going to have jobs. I'm in Colorado Springs. We're a huge military town. There's 5 military installations here. And I'm not prior military. I didn't have security clearance. And a lot of what I was doing, I was going to be on the short list of getting another job in our community. And I didn't want to leave. So I just decided, I was talking to my friend Sean and I was telling him my woes and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm buying a 24-unit building. And, he shared with me how much he was putting down for that 24-unit building. And at barely over 30, my brain could not even conceive of the ability to write a check that big. Anyway, I decided to take real estate a little more serious and take that as an avenue to replace my job and build my wealth over time. So
I kind of have a side question here. You said your friend's dad had bought and sold some businesses.
Yep.
Did you ever ask him, hey, why don't you just open up another business, or why are you getting into real estate now that you sold your company? What was his reasoning there?
He never stopped building businesses. He just did different businesses. And then, he started with a carpet cleaning business that went to carpet sales business that went to a flooring business, kind of mundane stuff, but very bread and butter. And, along the way, when he built these businesses, he also bought the ground underneath the businesses in high traffic areas. And I think he realized he made a ton of money on the land underneath the real estate, and that led to buying rentals and buying single family properties in the community we grew up in. And Sean saw what his dad was doing, and Sean did that, and I saw that, and I'm like, there's something here.
Yeah.
So his dad eventually started building houses and things like that, and built a business out of it as well, and it's done quite well.
Got it. So Mike, do me a favor. I know that we spoke a little bit offline, and again, I said I've got the crowbar here, so you can speak in generalities if you want, or more specifically, feel free to go as deep or as shallow as you like. But tell us, how many houses have you bought? I know that you said the slow and steady route, so let's define that.
Well, I did, I was a wholesaler. I was a flipper. I needed a job or an income source out of real estate while I was building my portfolio. So, I mean, I quit counting. I've done over 1,000 transactions here in Colorado Springs, and, that pace has significantly fallen off what it used to be. But, yeah, we've done a lot of deals here. So, slow and steady wins the race.
So one of the things I talk about on the show a lot, Mike, is the short game and the long game, right? And it's
Mhm.
interesting because you're like slow and steady, slow and steady. A lot of guys and gals listen to the show are like, I want to take over the world.
Yeah.
And you've never, I think I've known you for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I've been in masterminds with Mike, and he's never been, the guy in the front of the room trying to pound his chest, or, on the internet screaming how many deals that he's doing. But it seems like, the slow and steady thing has really paid off for you.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about, when you look around on your mindset being, hey, I'm slow and steady and I'm going to buy a few a year versus like looking at social media and everyone kind of screaming how they're going to buy 1,000 houses this year. Kind of emotionally, how has that affected you, or hasn't it? How have you kind of kept your pace, and, how do you view that?
Well, I have gone from the one man band to a team approach, and I've kind of scaled up and I've scaled back down, and a lot of it has to do with my personality, and my goal was never to be a leader of men. I never wanted a bunch of employees. I did management. I worked in retail while I paid my way through college, and I always got promoted. Like even in high school, I was working in retail and got promoted and had keys to the store and security codes and did deposits and all that stuff. And I managed people twice my age in high school. I managed people, around my age to, significantly older during my college. And then afterwards, I was in corporate America managing people. And I just realized I didn't like managing people. Like it was just not really what I wanted to do. And people annoyed me. And I really just wanted to kind of put my head down, do what I wanted to do, build some wealth, cash a few checks along the way. So, even in the mastermind we met in, as soon as I joined, it was like scale, scale, scale. Everybody wants to scale. And I'm like, well, how does Mike Jake want to scale?
Right.
Like Mike Jake doesn't want a big office and a bunch of people and delegating and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, how can I do it? If you read my dysfunctional personality profile, I'm surprised I accomplished anything in my life. But I figured, what can I do? Not what did Todd Toback do? Like when I met you, like you walked into the room and everyone's just like, holy crap, look at what this guy's doing. And I'm like, man, I don't want to do all that crap. and what works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. So I leveraged my relationships I had built in my community. I had done some training in my market. Kind of people knew who I was, and I did do some coaching early on. And one of my students who had turned quite successful and got her license and built a team, and she had employees and she had desks, and I had leads. I could scale my leads, so I scaled my leads. I dumped everything in my CRM over to her inbound person. Her inbound person either scheduled me to go look at stuff. Like if it was a free and clear property or it was a potentially a good seller finance, I would get scheduled to go on the appointment. If it was a low equity or something that might even be a listing, I trained a couple of the agents and they would go on the appointment. So I was able to scale my my marketing inbound leads from this to probably triple without having employees, without having any office overheads, and we just kind of shared. She got a listing out of the deal. She kind of owed me. If I got a deal out of her team, I owed her, and we just kind of washed things out every now and then.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So, Mike, one of the things that you mentioned just now is something that Jay Abraham calls relational capital, right? Because basically you brought on a bunch of employees without bringing on a bunch of employees, right? You brought on a team, a broker, someone with a license, someone answering the phone, someone doing, scheduling the appointment. So you were able to partner. I think you've used that word actually, partnered your way to scale. So that's awesome. I mean, obviously.
I have partnered my way in my business. I've partnered my way with my Roth IRA. I've partnered my way with another business partner to scale my portfolio. So my wife, just to back up a little bit, my wife runs management on our portfolio of single family rentals. And when we hit a certain mark, she's like, you're done. Because the only way to scale from here is to scale with people and things like that. And she didn't want to scale. So, we had enough. I hit my number that I wanted to hit for ego's sake. And then it was, okay, well, how can I keep going? How can I keep building? So I learned how to do stuff with my Roth IRA. I did that in 2010 where we had a bunch of rental depreciation carrying over to our income. So I made multiple six figures a year, but I had depreciation that offset all that. So I was in a zero tax bracket. So I took my traditional IRA from corporate America. I rolled it over into a Roth IRA, self-directed. I paid zero tax to do the Roth conversion because of the benefits of holding real estate. And those tax losses that carried over to my return. And then I figured out how to do long-term deals with my Roth IRA. And then when I deployed all that capital and it was working for me, then I kind of found another relational capital, a person who was a property manager that understood subject to, and we built another portfolio of about $8 million worth of single families that he managed. So, and I didn't do any of that management either, so.
Man, that's awesome. That was a lot to unpack right there, by the way. If your head is spinning, by the way, I'm trying to convince Mike to be a regular on the podcast. So, by the way, if you love today's show, kind of throw an email back and maybe I could twist his arm to do this. I'm also going to, at the end, you heard Mike talk about partnering a lot. And if you're on the show, you know that if you're in San Diego or if you're in the treasure of coastal Florida, we would love to partner with you. But if you're in Colorado Springs or Denver, I'm going to show you, or Mike's going to show you, if I could get that crowbar to push hard enough, how you can partner with Mike locally in Colorado Springs or the Denver area, if that's okay. So we'll share that for the end.
Yeah.
So, this guy is so modest, right? Mike is so modest. He's like, yeah, I bought a few houses here, but meanwhile, you heard some of the numbers he's throwing around here on the show, so they're low to some. Obviously, if you're trying to do your first deal, it's going to, blow your mind. But I'll tell you, if I've got a creative real estate question, and I'm a creative real estate guy, that's how I got started. But if I've got something that I can't figure out, you know who I call? I call Michael Jake, right? I text him, and he really, really has a great mind for us. So with that being said, my next question, tell us about your favorite way to buy a property.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good wholesale deal. But my favorite way to buy a house is subject to the existing financing. I think it's the easiest way to, one, you have very little competition. Two, you don't need banks. You don't need financial statements. You can acquire assets at a fairly regular and consistent pace at wholesale interest rates. and you don't have to rehab them. You don't have to, you reposition a house that's already fully functional, and you're solving a real estate problem that isn't property related, it's people related.
Right.
And that one strategy, if you could handcuff me and take every other technique away from me, and that's the only thing I could do to start, finish, and end the game, I would take buying property subject to the existing financing.
So if you want, I'd like to dig into that strategy a little bit more. I know I'm going a little off script. So ironically, we're buying one house subject to right now. We can go over my deal and you can explain it, or you can go over your latest deal. What would you prefer?
Go over yours.
Okay. So right now, we're under contract with a lady who has a house with an existing mortgage of $93,000. And we agreed to purchase the house for 98 grand. Okay, so basically we're going to give her $5,000. Well, let me stop here. A purchase price of 98 grand and there's $93,000 mortgage.
Okay.
Rents
Where
out.
is this house?
This is in Florida.
Okay, this is not a San Diego house.
No, not
what?
San Diego. No, I would kill for that deal. And I'm not really sure,
Okay. Gotcha.
I'd have to think
Wrapping my
twice
head
if I
around
was going to
this.
rip the equity off the table on that one. If that was in San Diego. But it's worth probably about 170, 180 fixed up, but it's in lived in condition. All right.
Okay.
So interest rate though is a little higher, right? I think it's at 5.5%, but the mortgage is, it was originated in 2010.
Cool.
So it's 11 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
So Mike Jake has this deal in front of him, right? Originally we bought it as a wholesale because we thought we could have wholesaled it. And I'm looking at this and, our acquisition specialist brought, I said, you know what? I think we could take over the mortgage on this one and do a sub 2. So now you got this deal in front of you, right? Let's pretend like your property manager, someone locked it up as a wholesale deal. You see it, right? What do you do?
Am I me? Am I a newbie? Who am I in this equation?
Let's leave Roth IRAs out for a minute, right?
Sure.
Because it sounds like you're about to do something that, you're never going to pay tax again legally.
No, I mean, when Mike Jake was the operator and wheeling and dealing and closing multiple deals a year or multiple deals a month, like I would still look at this as, okay, I gotta cover my marketing cost. Okay, I got to cover my $5,000 cash to the seller, and it sounds like the property needs some love. And how much in dollars do we need there?
Let's call it 10,000 to make it a great rental.
Okay, so let's just call it 20 grand we got wrapped up in this deal. And, we can all probably write a $20,000 check, but if you got to write $20,000 checks 5-6 times a month, you're probably going to run out of $20,000 checks at some point. Would you agree?
I would agree.
So as an operator, I'm going to look to my relationships. And so let me tell you everything I've done wrong, which is borrow money at accumulating interest rates that I would pay off when a house would resell. Ask me after 2008 occurred, ask me how that didn't work out well. So I would call somebody with like my neighbor, for instance. She's a long-term investor. Like if I talk to her about a flip property, she'd probably have very little to no interest, but I can say, hey, I can park this much money. It's probably going to give you about this kind of yield. And we'll probably hold this 5 to 10 years. Is that something you'd be interested in, or probably not? And she'd probably say, yeah, of course, because we've done a few of these. But it's easy to find somebody that's got 20 grand. And if you can present it in the right light and say, hey, we've got an asset that's worth this. We're buying it for this. I need this much of your money. I got a loan that's this much old. And I would kind of figure out, here's how much this loan is paying down. Okay. If my market is Florida, I would look at a 10-year window of Florida and say, okay, on average, my market is appreciating at 4 point whatever percent, historically. I'd put all these numbers and I'd say, here's an approximate return if I give you half the deal. Okay. So the house in my market, that house would not support me making payments to a second lien holder. So I want to borrow money that I don't have to make payments, that I can give them a yield when the property sells. Does that make sense?
That totally understand. So let me ask you, if you had your own capital, let's just say you were sitting on a lot of cash, will you bring on a partner on this, or would you do this deal?
No.
You'd start out on your own, but only if you ran out of cash. You do the second way.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, I guarantee you that's a double double-digit interest rate compounding over several years is the yield on the cash.
So you can either do this deal by yourself without bringing an investor, but if you had no money and let's say you found the deal, you had 5,000 in the bank and you're like, hey, I can't continue to operate, then you just bring on a partner.
Right.
Okay. So now would you just rent this thing? Would you sell it subject to? Would you sell it? Would you sell it on our financing terms? Would you sell it on a lease option or just rent it?
I would most definitely would not sell it on owner financing terms. I would not. I mean, I've done all these things.
Right.
My favorite way is put a good tenant in the house, rent it slightly under market to a tenant that has, long-standing job history, ties to the community, and is the best of the best tenants. I've done rent-to-owns. I've done owner financing. What I realized is I gave up a bunch of benefits I didn't need to give up because I felt like I was trying to dodge the management bullet. And, let's be honest, the first time you ever wholesale a house, it's like this gigantic mystery of, oh my God, how does that happen? And then once you do it a couple of hundred times, it's just like, whatever, just something. It's just a skill set, right? Management is just a skill set. And people are so scared of learning it. It's not that hard. And if you really don't want to be good at it, you can outsource that for part of the profits for a traditional management fee, or there's a myriad number of ways I've done it. I haven't looked at any of the houses we own or I've partnered with for years, if ever. So,
that is awesome. So let me ask you this. I know we recently had a conversation about, you bought a lot more rentals than you currently have right now.
mhm.
When do you decide to sell off a property?
One of my mentors always said, get rid of your worst house every year. So for a while, we always, we kind of pruned the portfolio of, and sometimes they weren't necessarily bad, but we would get back. You can't be in property management terribly long before you realize, we weren't always good at it. We sometimes put less than ideal tenants in the property, and we'd sometimes get a house back that needed a lot of rehab. And in that case, we often would put a bunch of rehab in it and then sell it to recoup our cash and take the money out. And at that point, like, do we redeploy it? Do we 1031 it into another house, or do we take the cash and pay off another house?
Got it. So when you decide to pay off another houses versus 1031, do you just at that point eat the taxes, or are you thinking that maybe the other houses that you bought, maybe the tax benefits would cancel that out?
I look at a lot of different things, and I mean, as my portfolio is aged, and a lot of our loans have very high double-digit loan constants, I'm like, we have low cap rentals. And when I had like 12, 13, 14, 15% loan constants, and these are low interest loans, they're 4, 5, 6% loans.
Can I stop you for a second? Can you explain what a loan constant is to everyone who's listening?
Sure. So let's say you've got like back, before the market crashed, 5 and 6% loans were typical, and that was a good interest rate. After you pay on a loan a certain amount of time, the principal, part of every payment, you're paying down the principal. And it's not much when the loan's new, but as it ages, when you get, 14, 15 years deep in a loan, usually about 17, you're paying more principal than interest. But if you look at the principal balance, okay, and you sum how the total of your interest and principal payments on an annualized basis. Are you with me so far?
I'm listening. Mm-hmm.
You know this stuff, but I
want everyone listening to hear this.
So I've got 12 months worth of principal and interest, and then let's say it's $10,000 is what I'm paying on the loan, and my loan balance is $50,000. My loan constant is the 10,000 divided by 50,000, just 20%. Okay, it's
so basically,
not really
so I get the short version is that if you pay that off, that's the return that you'll earn on your money every year by not staying in the loan. Is that correct?
Well, at least through the normal course of the rest of that loan. Yes.
Right. So over the, let's say there's 4 years left, you'd earn about 10% on your money by
I'd have 15 to 18 years left on that
15
loan.
to 18 years left. Okay.
So
now, look, you're
why,
living the...
Why would I do that?
Okay, why would you do that? Go ahead.
Why would I do that?
Yeah.
If you don't want more, but more houses, more management, but you do want more cash flow, I can take capital here, pay off an asset, increase my cash flow, and actually I'm lowering my management because I'm getting rid of one asset and I'm paying off another one, and I'm increasing cash flow at the same time.
Right. So you're using your equity to free up time and cash flow.
Right. And there are people that would say, don't ever, never pay off a low interest 30-year fixed rate debt. There's an argument to be said for that, but at some point, enough's enough and less is more, meaning less houses, less tenants, less everything. Is once your cash flow needs are met, and then some, and once your net worth goals are met, the rest of it, you're just playing for sport.
Right. Well, that leads to my next question, because now, everybody who listens to the show, I think, well, the majority of it, right there, I think they're looking for that cash flow. They're looking for that equity. And, Mike, I mean, not to, to give you a big head, right? But you've made it, right?
Yeah.
So now what does your day-to-day look like? Right. I mean, it sounds like you've hit your income goals, your net worth goals. What does your day-to-day look like now that you continue to hold property, and where you at now?
I do a whole lot of whatever the heck I want. I do, I nerd out a lot on our, we still have a lot of properties and investments, and I nerd out on, what that looks like and how can I take the chess pieces on the board and without complicating my life, without complicating my wife's life, how can I better our position? And that's kind of it. Like right now, I always have stuff peripherally that you can't see there, but I have one house that I have a 0% seller financing loan on, and I have a balloon on that one coming up. So that is on our list to sell this coming year. And I have two other houses that are probably the weakest links, and we're thinking about selling those, but we got good tenants in there. If they stay, we'll keep them. If they don't stay, we'll probably sell them.
Got it.
And then what do I do with the capital? With my IRA, I try to encourage some churn in my IRA so I can realize some yield so I can redeploy it.
Got it.
As I redeploy capital in my IRA, I'm like, how can I maximize my return and predict where I want to be with my Roth IRA, and then what kind of investment's going to meet my long-term goals there.
Man, I'd love to do another episode just on Roths. I mean, you could really, 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 really dig into that. And that's really important, by the way. If you're playing the long game, if you feel like you're on the treadmill, this is the episode for you. Mike's the person to talk to. So let me ask you this. What would you tell an investor who's just starting out, who feels like he's on a treadmill, right? He listens to this or she listens to this and their mind is blown. They're like, oh man, I'm deal the deal. What's the next step here?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of philosophies you need to grasp. Is the best time to plant a tree for shade is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And like, if you feel like you're on a treadmill, it's because you haven't planted any seeds along the way. And as wholesalers, and I have been a wholesaler, and there are a lot of houses, man, I had to flip, I had to wholesale because of necessity, or to keep the engine going. Like I have been in a situation where we had $25,000, $35,000, $45,000 a month in marketing going out. And somebody's got to pay for that, and who pays for that? It's the wholesales, it's the flip, but you got to keep, you got to make it a goal to keep the good stuff. And, my market, I didn't have the luxury of saying, oh, I'm going to go take that house because it's a super high cap rate and that's going to slowly replace my income. I had low cap rate houses. We had cheap low cap houses. We had expensive high cap houses. So I kept by my definition at any given moment, the best of those houses that I could. And most of the way I could keep them was buying creatively, taking over payments, seller financing, or lease purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And those were my go-to formulas, with the occasional burr method. Like I was doing, I mean, we didn't call them burrs back then. We just called them, a buy and refi. You buy it, you use your equity in lieu of down payment to refinance and keep a good house. But honestly, a lot of the stuff I bought super cheap, I don't think they were the greatest of rentals. And if you only buy rentals because they're cheap, you're going to have maybe not necessarily the best portfolio of rentals. If you buy just a good house at retail sorry.
By the way, Warren Buffett says the same exact thing. I don't know if you've ever heard him say that. Can I finish what you were going to say?
Sure.
Because again, I think sometimes you have to hear something, a bunch of times from a few different people for it to click, right? But I think, Mike has always talked about, hey, it's not really necessarily about the cash flow. But Warren Buffett says, hey, when he looks at buying businesses, he has this thing called, I think he calls it the used cigar method, right? Or the viewpoint. And he said he used to look for like used cigars on the side of the road in terms of, like businesses that were that way. And he goes, you could pick up a used cigar that someone's already smoked, right? And you can get it basically for nothing and pick it up and take a couple puffs. And then, that's it. There's nothing left in the bone, right? And they realized that was a losing strategy rather than, buying a really expensive box of cigars, right? Being that nicer house that if you kept it, the compounding over time would give you way more, exponentially more than the used cigar butt that you saw on the side of the street that nobody else wanted.
Yeah. Well, $1,000 house that appreciates in a market at 5%.
You mean $100,000 house?
What's that?
You said $1,000 house?
Oh, sorry, $100,000 house. And a $500,000 house. They both go up at 5%. I mean, the $500,000 house more in real dollars.
Right.
The $500,000 house has more in real dollars of loan amortization. It has more in depreciation that carries over. So both of them have one tenant in there. One tenant is probably more adversely affected by a flat tire than another. One, it's just a flat tire. The other one, it is probably the difference between you getting rent that month or not getting rent that month. So one type of asset attracts a completely different tenant demographic. And one of my mentors always said, buy in the middle of the market. Buy something that the blue collar guy can strive to get into and the white collar guy isn't too ashamed to live in if things don't go his way. You want to buy in multi-generational neighborhoods where, the trees are mature. The old people live there and will shame the young people if they don't water the grass. I mean, you want to buy property in good areas that are going to attract good tenants, and it starts with the asset. You can have the best management philosophies on earth, but if you have an asset that doesn't attract a good tenant, you're not going to get a good tenant. So.
Right. Well, my favorite question of the day, if you want to get a hold of Mike or you want to partner with Mike, if you were in the area, are you willing to have people reach out if they've got a deal, maybe want to partner with you, Mike?
Sure. What do you want me to give me my email address?
Whatever you want. Could be your Instagram handle, could be Facebook. They can get you on Facebook, however you want.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I probably have thousands of people that have friend requested me. And if I don't know you, I may not say yes. So just shoot me an email.
Okay.
If I know you, I'll probably friend you. It's Mike, M-I-K-E, at swiftresults.com. Shoot me an email. If I can help you put a deal together, if you want to partner on a deal, that's great. Don't hit me up if you want to tell me why things aren't working out for you. I can't help you find motivation. You're going to find that for yourself, or you're not going to. But if you're doing something, if I can help point you in the right direction, whether you're in my area or not, I'm happy to help. If you got deals, if I can help you structure them, I'm a nerd and I love that stuff. So. I love this.
I
know he's got some really cool situation we're going to talk about.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, so if you've got a deal and again, you want to partner, email Mike. If you're looking for just, free coaching, he's not the guy.
I'll help you if I can. I mean, but Todd, like people reach out to you all the time and say, well, here's my story and here's why I'm not doing anything. Like, I can't help you, man.
Yeah.
You got to find your own motivation. It's like, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I did last week. Here's what I don't think is, or I'm not getting the results I need. I can help that situation. I can't help you get off your ass, pardon my French, and do something. Like only you can do that.
Right.
But if you're doing something, if you need a little help, if you need to think about a deal differently, maybe, or how you look at things, maybe I can't help you.
Well, sounds awesome, Mike. I love having you on the show. Always great advice. And if you're looking for the long game, man, today's episode was awesome. Remember to head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com. And if you want to download the script, go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script. And we love your show ideas. So if you get the email for the show, you can reply back. Let us know what you'd like to hear about. And man, I'm just loving the show. So thanks so much, Mike. And I will talk to you on the next episode of the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast.